Now, just a few quick things about our organization, Quint Wellington Redwood. We're a completely independent management consulting firm. We were established in 1992 over in Amsterdam. We'll be celebrating our 25-year anniversary next year. But today we are a completely global company. We have over 250 consultants operating in 49 countries all over the world. Our core business practices include sourcing, architecture, governance, lean IT, service management, and DevOps, of course. We're very proud to say that we've been listed as the top global advisor on sourcing and governance by the IAOP the last 3 years in a row. We received the highest possible ratings in the areas of client satisfaction, delivery of excellence, and innovative programs. And last off, we do continue to be a trendsetter in the areas of IT service management, lean IT, and DevOps. Now, as I mentioned, this is the third session of our DevOps transformation webinar series. Starting a week ago, we started off with the impact of DevOps on operations. Last Friday, we covered service management in a DevOps environment, and today we're going to be covering tooling. If you need to view if you would like to view the first two webinars, well, those recordings are up on our Vimeo channel, and you'll also receive a link for a way to view those as well in a follow-up email to this webinar session. And today I'd like to introduce our speakers. Our speakers today are Niels Loder and Alex Van Kampen. If you were part of the last Friday's session, Frederick Schucken was on that. For us, he'll also be featured on Thursday's webinar, which is on the business case for DevOps. But today is Niels Loder and Alex Van Kampen. Thank you both for joining us today, guys.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, other Alex. So a lot of Alexes going around here. So welcome everybody listening in. So as Alex said, today we're going to be talking about DevOps is more than buying a tool. Niels and I will have a little bit of a back and forth on a couple of different topics. And those topics include the state of tooling. Also, tooling means people and skills, so it goes beyond just the technical stuff that we all like and want to talk about most of the time. Then also tooling means time and the investment related to starting with this, with all this awesome stuff. Then again, we found another way to put the word tooling in a category with talking about leadership and tooling. Then we'd like to tie everything together, wrap it up, and then open the lines for Q&A through the Q&A panel, as Alex just talked about. But Niels, before we start diving in all these different topics, just a quick question. A webinar on this topic. So we all know, of course, by now that DevOps is not just about tooling, right?
Well, yeah, that's what you'd think. But let me just say a little story. I was at a large international bank last week talking with senior and middle managers about DevOps. They're looking to enhance their transformation. And so in the introduction, everybody's going, yeah, you know, DevOps. It's more about culture. It's than about tooling. And you know, we went around. Everybody introduced themselves. It was great. And then we got about 5 minutes into the discussion, and the only thing that got talked about by these managers was tooling. And it was really bizarre how this this went from you know, kind of high level into really detailed stuff. And remember, this is a group of managers, so you can imagine how the discussion would have gone with a group of techies. So it was really strange. So automation holds has this huge hold on us as you know, people working in IT. You know, we can do all these cool stuff, cool things with tooling. You know, testing and quality control and registrations, and we just love our tooling. But first time, but it was the most recent meeting I had on this topic. It just blinds us. So, but you know, before we go into you know, all the other aspects, you know, Alex, maybe you can tell us a bit about the state of tooling. Where are we at the moment?
Well, that's thank you for that introduction, also, Niels. But where we are actually is we're all over the place. So, and I think if you joined the first webinar, any of you, that you saw this infographic or the periodic table of DevOps tools that partner of us, Zevia, puts out there, there is a tool for basically every part of any IT delivery process. So anything related to version control, to deployment, to and just basically anything in between those areas, and of course close to monitoring. So there's a whole lot of tools out there, and we see we see a lot of different things happening. We see, of course, these big suites from different vendors, but we also see a lot of fit-for-purpose open source tools for very specific activities out there. It's it's just a very broad and rich mix of different tools out there, and of course, there's some names that everybody I think is familiar with, either Chef or Puppet or maybe Jenkins for or orchestrating your build process. There's just a lot of that out there. So
yeah. Yeah, it's a mind-boggling number of tools, and if you go to a DevOps Days conference, I don't know whether it struck you, but every year there seems to be a new tool that is the kind of the taste of the month, and it's like everybody's talking about the new tool, or it started off the year before, one or two people talking about it, and then the next year everybody's talking about it. And then the year after, it's kind of, where did that tool go? So there's the life cycle seems to be shortening, amazingly.
yeah, well, exactly, and I do think there's a couple of them out there that turn out to be so good that they'll stick around. But then you get into what you maybe seen a couple of years ago in sort of a platform discussion. You would now see a company saying, "No, we're a Puppet company. Oh, well, we're a Chef company. We don't like you." So, curious to see how that ends up.
It's Windows and Apple all over again. But then, in terms of, tooling obviously has benefits, but it also has some drawbacks. Maybe you could tell us a bit more about that.
Well, yeah, no, definitely. So we're all very familiar with the promises and the awesome stuff that tooling is supposed to do for us, or automation is supposed to do for us. So first off, of course, it's going to enhance speed, and because it enhances all the speed, we can improve quality. We're not going to do any repetitive manual stuff anymore, so we'll have more happy people that make fewer mistakes, and we'll just have less errors because of it. But then there is some drawbacks that we need to be aware of. Now, to be honest, I'm a big proponent or advocate of automating. So I think you should automate everything, even though there's some drawbacks, and you need to be aware of those. So a couple of those that we wanted to sort of highlight today is there is, of course, a learning curve to automating this. You can't just say, okay, now we're going to buy the tool, we're going to plug it in, and all of our either legacy or complex landscape with all of our different interfaces between all these systems are going to be awesomely automated. There is a learning curve to do that now, and as you've seen on the previous slide, with all those tools out there, there's a lot of there's not just one size fits all, and also the starting point is not that clear or generic for everybody out there. So there is a learning curve to it. Now, we often like to talk about I'll talk about the improved quality when you start doing automation, probably because of the increased speed and just a quicker turnaround time to fix anything or improve anything. But the fact of the matter is, if you, for example, only focus on your delivery pipeline but do nothing on quality control, you're going to be introducing some mechanisms to push low quality stuff into your environments pretty quickly. So
you notice that one on the testing side, where people are automating their manual tests rather than rethinking their test strategies and making sure that they're getting a really high quality but fast test mechanism in place, where they're not maybe testing the whole application, but they're testing parts, and making sure that
Well, I think I want to say exactly, but I do think I I kind of lost audio on you, Niels, so
Oh,
I
sorry.
hope everyone else out there can still. Okay, there you are, back again. So, but I think you're exactly right. So, if you're going to, for example, focus on automating your testing, or if focus on the delivery pipeline and not focus on testing, you're going to have a little bit of a challenge. And if you only focus on testing and do not reconsider the way that you go about testing, and put some regression test tools in the hands of a UAT team, I don't think that's going to it's not going to bring you that much. But then, even though we do know that there is, it's going to decrease the amount of manual labor, still picking a starting point, as we said before, is going to be a big challenge, because if you just look at that periodic table of DevOps tools, which probably covers a lot, but not every tool out there, is just identifying the tool that you want to use and is appropriate for either your enterprise or your department, or maybe even at a team level. So identifying those tools, selecting them, there's a lot of time that you can spend on that, and then maybe even there's going to be a lot of investment associated with that if you buy into buying the suite tooling from the original vendors with very high and expensive license costs, as opposed to the open source stuff. Yeah, but then again, also there's the just the obvious one. If we're going to introduce these tools, we're not going to bring in new people who work with these tools. We're going to introduce these tools to the existing workforce in most cases. So there is training required. There is a ramp-up time, or a sort of a learning journey for the individuals involved as well. So we should be very aware of that, and not just say, okay, dear techies, you have tools, go forth and automate. It's
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the big underestimations when it comes to DevOps. We get focused on the kind of state of DevOps. Puppet Labs reports every year, and there are fabulous numbers about how much faster and how much better you can do things. But it's all one of the key underlying drawbacks is that you've got to focus on your people development. You've got to make sure that you develop your people. And this is where we're making all kinds of expeditions into the unknown, and it's a difficult area to get into, simply because as IT management, we don't want people experimenting too much. We don't want them mucking around with development and test, and preferably not the production environments either. We want that to be stable. We want it to be usable. So it's this necessity of getting people to increase their skills, increase their knowledge is a really a vital one.
Yeah.
What's your experience on that?
Well, I'll look at that. Well, I think it's a fairly common theme across any trade show you would go to, or any DevOps related event that you would go to and talk about. We know that all this stuff is DevOps basically is sort of the new wild frontier of IT. So there is at least what I would advise anybody on that is just go to at least one or two of these trade shows a year. Talk to different individuals, talk to these different organizations, and talk about how these concepts help them move forward, and the concept of automation, and how they introduce those concepts to the people. Because what I've found is, it does take time talking or learning these automation tools. However, if you get the concept across, and if you can identify where and what area of whatever part of your delivery pipeline this is going to help you, then the smart people in your organization are going to pick this stuff up pretty quick. But it has to be focused, right? It has to be. You have to sort of have these guidelines and guiding principles and architecture principles in place for the stuff that you do. And what we want to prevent now is because it's such like the new frontier, and there's such awesome stuff out there that at the end of the day, 2 years from now, or maybe a year from now even, we're going to have a a fella holding up this awesome app with a big red deploy button, but then a daisy chain of all these little automated events in the background that we can no longer manage.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I mean, and you're talking about developing skills, and some people will do it more quickly than others. But I don't know about you, but the IT organizations I get into tend to straight away come to me and say, well, we don't have time for this. We're busy, busy, busy. We're too busy making sure that the stuff that's in production now is working properly. How do you go about making sure that you get your time, get the time to experiment? How do you make sure that that you automate the right stuff?
well, I don't think you're ever going to be definitely sure if you're automating the right stuff, but I think that one of the so first, going really to the beginning of that, for me, I truly believe that every part of your process should be automated. Any repetitive manual activity detracts from overall quality. But before you can actually start and automating all this stuff and just buying these awesome tools, there is a need for an understanding of the overall process, the actual process that you do today, but also just taking time for experimentation, taking time for going through an improvement cycle and assessing whether or not that is helpful to you. That is something that everybody needs, or every organization, at least in my view, needs to do. Now, some of the ways that we've done this in the past with teams that we've worked with is just identify a portion of team capacity. If you would be working in any, for instance, in a Scrum-like manner, where you would capture the size of your backlog, you would identify like a part of that for improvement, just to focus on how can we improve our own service. Because if you can do that, and if you can demonstrate some results from that, your business partner or whoever you need to negotiate priority with is going to understand and see the benefit of that. But it really comes down to taking time to experiment and go through these improvement cycles.
Yeah, and one of the things that you need to look at is make sure that when you start automating stuff, that what you automate is the right stuff, in terms of that you've got a good, well-designed process that you understand in practice in a manual way before you start throwing it into some kind of tool. And this is one of the things where we're seeing a lot of IT organizations really not making that step, because the processes are not really the same as the ones that we know and love from ITIL. They're slightly different. I mean, the process we're looking to automate is from development through testing, through quality control, into a kind of acceptance environment, and potentially and into production, where potentially your acceptance environment is your production environment. And this is a different process that we need to look at, that is now fairly siloed. We have departments that run these things, and now it's going to be just one team who all together need to understand that single process.
Yeah, no, exactly, and again, and something that we mentioned before, it also really depends on where you are with the team, or maybe even the application architecture. So for some teams, it might be a good idea to start, I don't know, the same parts of really readily available cloud-type infrastructure, but most of the organizations are not there yet. So it really depends on where you are, what you want to focus on. But the thing is, as we said in the beginning, you really want to be clever about it, and you want to understand what you're doing. You don't want to automate something that is, you don't want to, have the high-speed garbage process.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, and we're coming kind of full circle back to my my room full of leaders that we're talking about tooling. What do they need to do? I mean, because the tooling is this wonderful topic, and we see it talking about the capability and these kind of things, it's enough to distract anybody. And as we've discussed many times, DevOps is really the ultimate search for flow within IT, and leadership has the unenviable role of really ensuring that we focus on that goal. How are they going to go about achieving it?
Well, yeah, it's a fairly to me that is always a challenge, because you have to do it, and it very much depends on where you are in the organization again, and also the kind of leaders that you have. If it's just the people that have been there the longest, or the ones that have the best idea, or the ones that are used to be the best engineers, or whatever variation you would have. But so that's a difficult one. But to me, it basically boils down to sort of developing leadership in such a way that they can support this this type of delivery, and they understand what it means to support and enable a team to experiment and go ahead with these interesting topics. So for me, I would expect any leader or anybody in a leadership position to understand the benefits, to understand how this automation can be an enabler of so much more, but also understand that it's not the only, or it's not the universal solution. So, I would expect any leader to sort of kickstart a sort of improvement or experimentation in a different topic. But I would hope that they would allow the people with the more technical expertise to really come up with the solutions in this case, and have them experiment. Of course, not as a free-for-all, and just find any tool you want and go ahead with anything you want. So, of course, within certain standards and guiding principles, especially if you're in more of an enterprise organization, but without being bogged down by any existing hurtful, slow process or any 6 or 12-month procurement cycle, because we need to find that one awesome tool with a huge license that can solve every problem across the organization. So it's really about enabling.
Yeah, it's always. I mean, that's one of the goals of a lot of suppliers is to.
Well, I think I'm just going to take over for Niels here, as he sounds like his favorite Enya album, "The Sound of Silence." So what we've basically been talking about in the past 3 webinars, but also a little more today, is automation is a very big part of just being a high-performing organization, or being a high-performance DevOps organization at that. But it's definitely not. It's not the only thing that we should be mindful of. There's a lot of different elements that we think need to work together. Now, and we've talked about. We've touched upon basically some of these today as well, but what we want to always address is, if we start automation, we need to make sure that we understand where we are in terms of individual teams, and related to either skills of the team, but maybe also application architecture, or just basically the stuff that we want to start automating, and then also what tools will be appropriate for that. And Niels, I'm not sure if you're back already.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hello.
Okay, good. Yeah, because it is all about making sure that we that definitely the leaders of IT organizations really take the responsibility to look at the full spectrum of what needs to be done. And as I said at the beginning, the chance that you're going to get caught up in an automation discussion and kind of lose sight of things like making sure you're creating high-performing teams, making sure that you're creating the right performance metrics, that you're looking specifically at behavior and attitude within the teams, and so, basically, DevOps is on the surface. It looks very much like it's DevOps, or like it's the only thing that's in DevOps. But it's there's a lot more that we need to take care of when we transform our IT organizations.
Yeah, no, I think we both agree on that, Mr. Niels. So as we come to the end of our time slot, and hopefully still have some data left on our connections, let's see if there's any questions. So, other Alex, do we get any questions today?
Yes, we do have one to start off with. Just it's still open, everybody. So if you have a question, feel free and ask it right now if you'd like. The question I have for you, Alex and Niels, is what are your thoughts on open source compared to typical vendors?
So, and Niels, maybe you'll allow me to jump in on this one because I have
Yeah.
a pretty strong opinion on that, and not just because I used to work for one of the bigger vendors in the past, but so this is a recurring topic anywhere you go, and anybody you speak to that are big or doing a lot of stuff out there. To me, the open source versus licensed or closed source discussion is basically beyond the point. Besides the point, because what we want to do is have a fit for purpose solution that helps us enable so much more. So it's sort of besides the point. However, what I do feel is something that you might have seen traditionally a couple of years back, talking about, I don't know, these either being an IT service management suite or whatever kind of big suite you see out there, is you'll have vendors talk about, we have the best suite of DevOps tools that basically buy just a $200,000 license to start with, and we can do all things DevOps to you. That is a premise that I don't buy into, and I very much appreciate anything that is just fit for purpose, and then you tend to look a little more towards open source solutions. Now, it might have something to do also with a risk profile of your organization if you really want to go there, but to me, the basic answer is focus on something that is fit for purpose. I don't believe in universal solutions or suites that can sell you everything that you need in one software license. So I would always say, focus on the fit for purpose. And there's great examples, even of financial institutions and other organizations that not only leverage open source solutions, but also started contributing to the open source community. And I think one great example of that is, I believe it's Capital One, who even have their own blog on how they contribute to these open source solutions. So for me, the short answer would be focus on what's fit for purpose, and my cynical approach would be, or answer would be, I don't believe in a one-size-fits-all everything suite.
Thank you for your answer, Alex. And next question that we have here is, what I get from this webinar series so far is that DevOps transformations begin with people, culture, and skills. How can I present an argument to the CIO to understand this?
Ooh, that's always a difficult one.
Well, I guess so far Niels has not said anything to disagree with, but basically because
Can you hear me
we
now?
keep having this audio problem, which is apologies out there for everybody. I'm not sure what is causing it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay.
No,
Try once more. Another one.
getting very, very annoying. The thing that I would try and do is work out what kind of problem does the CIO see. If you know what the key aspects are that you need to tackle, then you'll be able to tune your argumentation to those particular problems that the CIO is seeing. And we're going to be talking about things like faster delivery, more responsive kind of organization, and then it's there's always an opening to basically say, well, hang on. Yes, tooling is part of the answer, but it's not the only thing. It's all about making sure that we can actually ensure that people deliver what we've agreed upon. And I think that's really where the argumentation centers around, and it's about making sure that the CIO understands that it's not just bits and bytes and machines. The thing that makes IT work is the people. And one of the essential things is that we find that leaders, IT leaders, are a little bit concerned with DevOps because they don't know what questions to ask. Is how do we how does DevOps add to the flow of value through the IT organization? That's the really key one. So every decision that you take in your DevOps transformation must be related to that question.
Got it. And correct me if I'm wrong, Niels, I think we'll be touching upon this a little bit more in depth on Thursday's session, which is on the business case for DevOps as well.
Yeah. We'll go into that into more detail.
Yep. And I think we'll make this the last question today, guys. And this is, what do you think is the very minimum tool set to start with?
Well, for me, and again, anything related deeper than that is very, very technology and team skill or team position specific. But the one thing to always start with is version control. Anything you do, wherever you are, even if it's just related to keeping quality control and test scripts, or if it is actual code quality that you want to maintain, version control is the absolute minimum starting point of anything you do.
Yeah, and just to add to that, sorry to continue on about behavior and attitude, is creating that discipline to keep version control up to date is one of the key behavior and attitude aspects that you need to be working on as well. And if you see that you're falling down in trying to get your version control sorted out properly, then it's that you're going to have a harder time completing your DevOps transformation.
Exactly, and to add to that also, in some cases when, of course, we should always build behavior and attitude and that discipline to keep that version control up to date, or any part of that, but also something that we talked about, I think it was either the last one or the one before that, we talked about making sure that you sort of limit the degrees of freedom for teams to just do whatever they want in whatever environment they're in. So anything related to that. But I hope that sort of answers the question. But it's to me, it's a topic that I would want to continue talking about a long, long time.
But we're over our allotted time now.
Already over.
And on that note, we'll just go ahead and start wrapping things up today, guys. So I just want to remind everyone that this Thursday, the day after tomorrow, is the last session of our DevOps Transformation webinar series, and we'll answer, I think, some of those questions where sort of presenting a case for a CIO, which is the business case for DevOps, and actually going ahead and doing it. Please go ahead and register for that last session, and there'll be a link to register if you have not already in the thank you email for this session. And now I just want to show you guys the methods that we have to contact us. We're active on just about every single social media network, so feel free to follow us on there. Latest announcements for webinars, white papers, blog posts, and other thought-provoking material that we have out there. And the last thing I want to touch on before we go today is our attendance at the DevOps Enterprise Conference next month in San Francisco. If your organization is considering DevOps or looking to get more educated at DevOps, this is really the show to go to. This is right in the heart of Silicon Valley, right in San Francisco. All the big players with all the big stories that are doing DevOps are there. Incredibly interesting, incredibly engaging, and they do a great job throughout the entire conference. Myself and Niels will be there, so if you'd like to meet up with Niels and pick his head about DevOps and just maybe meet him in person if you happen to be there, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be there. I just want to thank everybody again for joining us today. we hope to see you again on Thursday. And we apologize for the technical difficulties today. We we don't like them as much as you do. Everybody, thanks again. Have a wonderful day.